Gentlemen, well, I guess ladies and gentlemen, now that I have a couple of lady viewers, guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker. Some say I have the ability to light up a room when I walk into it. I just maintain that I know how to use light switches really well. Today, I've got a kind of an interesting one. It's really a brief little story. It's this one. My wife of over 40 years wants a lover. Can you imagine? Imagine being a guy who's been married for 40 years, and one day your wife comes in and says, "Hey, I'd like to bone somebody else other than you." And the weird part is, he said, "Okay, I'll help you do that." Nothing like, finding out 40 years into your love life that things are maybe gone awry. Part of the funny thing I did with this thumbnail is that the guy has a tramp stamp, and I thought that was really funny. So that's why I use this particular image of the guy. But more than that, I also want to talk about the rise of poly relationships. I don't know what it is about poly relationships, but they're on the rise. They're growing. They're becoming more and more popular. And for Gen Z and Gen X, not Gen X, millennials, for millennials and Gen Z, it's on the rise. It's becoming popular. It's talked about more in TV shows. So I think it's one of those things. I wanted to talk about it because it does affect dating. It does affect whether, it kind of goes to the same things that I've said multiple times, where women would rather share a winner than just date a loser or what they can deem a loser, or just one guy that's average. And on top of that, a lot of guys, especially guys that are maybe not so lucky in the love department, are kind of like, well, you know what? She's average, I'm average, but I have to share. I guess I'll share her with 3 or 4 other average guys, and then for her, I guess that's a win. If you get 3 5s, what's the old joke? If you sleep, would you rather sleep with 2 5s or sleep with 1 10? It's kind of the same thing, where 3 5s get a 5 of a woman, but she gets 15 because she's got 3 5s. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Just as a reminder, if you like the long-form content, which is all my videos that I've got, which are, 5 or 6 topics today, they're going to be all one video on betterbachelor.locals.com here on YouTube. I'm going to chop them up. Also, I'm going to start putting more stuff over on Locals for supporters only, because there's about 50,000 people over there that are there, and I'm glad they're there. But they get all my content for free, which is good. But I'd like some support so I can stay ad free, and I don't have to do sponsors for like Wireshark VPN or some of this other crap. All right, so here's the article. My wife wants a lover. How can I help her find one? After 40 years of marriage, she's looking for a friend with benefits. Where can we find a partner she can trust? That's kind of sad, isn't it? It says we are a retired couple who've been married for 40 years. So let's say they got married at 20 or 25. That puts them in their 60s somewhere. I adore my wife, and she adores me. Does she, though? We still have an active sex life, but we have talked about her finding another partner to be with on occasion. Neither of us approves of going online to find one. Yeah, you wouldn't want to get a risky, derelict person to be banging your wife of 40 years. How would you suggest that we find her a friend with benefits whom she can be with and trust? Our kids all live away from us, so we're not terribly hung up about anyone finding out. What's interesting is I notice he's not trying to find another one. It's just her. And for any of those people that say, hey, when you hit your 60s, and when I was younger, I thought life ended at like 50. And here I'm knocking on that door, and it's far from over, let me tell you. So I have to assume in the 60s it continues on. They say the key issue is trust. It never gets easy to find someone to trust with any aspect of your life. Finances, work, household, even grooming. So naturally, it would be particularly difficult when it comes to creating a sexual triad. The first thing you and your wife should do is discuss it in great detail and the agreement and blah, 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 blah. There needs to be clear, transparent, mutual consent. And now they're swingers, I guess. Swingers is actually a thing. When I was in Raleigh, This was kind of right around the start, Raleigh, North Carolina. I lived there for a little while. And this was right on at the beginning of the online dating and the dating things. You'd see couples out there looking for a third. But like I was swiping as a guy, so I only came across the women's profile, and the women were like, I have a husband or I have a boyfriend, and we'd like a third. What I found interesting is many of those people that were saying, I'd like a third, but we have to keep it on the down low. Yeah, that's called cheating. That's really not a poly relationship. But this is kind of what I want to talk about today. Polyamory is growing, and we need to get serious about it. Now, this is from Quillette, which is kind of left-leaning, but they do have kind of a middle-of-the-road take on it in most ways. And this is from a couple years ago. So obviously, again, as always, things get a little bit, things have changed every year more than the last year. So in the last 3 years, we've gone crazier than we have in the decade before. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's about an 11-minute read. I'll link it down below. But there's a couple points. They say here that we need to talk about polyamory. It's the biggest sexual revolution since the 60s. It's surprisingly common among millennials and Gen Z. It's often misunderstood and stigmatized by mainstream monogamous culture. Some people think poly is the best way to integrate freedom, honesty, openness, and commitment. Others think it's an existential threat to Western civilization. I do like how they say it's often misunderstood and stigmatized. No, it's not misunderstood. It's where you're dating multiple people, and you're kind of in committed relationships with multiple people. So it's not a bunch of hookups. You're just in a committed relationship with more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people. Some people have committed/open relationships, like apparently Jada Pinkett Smith, without Will Smith's knowledge. I mean, that's happening more and more. But there's not much to misunderstand. It's the fact that either A, you don't want a pair bond, or you don't want to be with one person for your life, but you want something maybe that's more meaningful than just kind of going out and having your one-night stands. But they say we should take existential risks seriously. However, they don't really sound like it's a risk. I'll tell you, if you go back and look at the debauchery that the Roman and kind of Greek civilizations went through in early years before the fall of Rome, kind of thing, they got pretty open with their sexuality and their freedoms. And the government took some liberties, and it does in many ways kind of seem similar as what's going on right now. But here's the main takeaways that I wanted to read out of this. About 4 to 5% of all adults are currently in open or poly relationships. About 20% have tried some kind of open relationship at some point. So here's the risk with that. So that's 25% of people. That's 1 in 4. So here's the risk with that, is even if they say, well, they tried it at one point and maybe they felt it wasn't right for them, who's to say they don't come back around and decide maybe they'd like to give it another go? There's a lot of people and articles that I've read here on Better Bachelor where we talk about women that, you know, they have their thrills in their 20s. They go out and they have good times with attractive men because they make themselves sexually available to those guys. And those guys are like, well, I'll sleep with anybody because, you know, I'm good enough looking, or I can have a good time. And yeah, sure, why not? And then those women finally find the right guy, quote unquote, that will actually settle down with them in their 30s. And then they get a little attention from the gym bro or the dude bro or a coworker or somebody else they find attractive, and they either cheat or they say, hey, let's try an open relationship. And there's lots of Reddit posts about how that's turned out poorly for just about everybody involved. They say among adults age 18 to 44, 17% have had sex with someone else with the consent of their partner, up from 9% among adults age 45 to 54. So that's basically, again, 17, we'll round it to 20%, have actually gotten permission from someone they're dating to sleep with somebody else. To me, that's either A, the person that gives the okay doesn't have enough confidence in themselves to say, no, you can't do that, and we're breaking up, and you need to shuffle off. To me, it sounds, to me, I'm not saying this is the way it is, but to me, it feels very needy that someone's like, yeah, you can sleep with somebody else, but please still keep dating me because I feel like I have no other options in life. Now, I know that's not necessarily the way it is, but you got to remember that I don't fall in that 18 to 44. I'm a couple years outside of that range. So for me, it's just a no-go for me. But maybe younger people are like, hey, you know what? Like a committed relationship, it can be committed and you can live together, but maybe they don't love each other, or maybe they're okay with not pair bonding, or maybe they're okay with just kind of having, you know, there's something to be said, and I think this shows the fragility of people's emotions nowadays, where a lot of people say, you know something, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to fall in love. I'm okay with the friends with benefits thing for the rest of my life. And I've got no hate on people like that. I think a lot of guys in this community are kind of like, yeah, I date and I still enjoy myself with the ladies or whatever, but I'm not gonna fall in love. I'm not gonna commit to one person forever. I'll date them, and I'll even date them exclusively for X amount of time, or I'll date casually for X amount of time, and then I just bounce. So I think things are a lot more fluid than they used to be, even just a few years ago. And again, I'm not saying that anything's wrong with that, but you have to understand that if you are one of these people that say, I'd like a committed one-on-one relationship, or I'd like to get married, or I'd like to have kids, or I'd like these kind of, quote, old-fashioned nuclear family, and I mean that kind of facetiously, where the odds of that, again, are smaller and smaller. 5% are in open relationships now. 20% have tried it. 17% have slept with somebody else with the consent of their current partner. We know the statistics are somewhere around 50% of people are cheating without the consent of their partner. 60% of marriages are falling through. So, again, the numbers are against you. They say about 28% of adults say it's not natural for human beings to be faithful to only one person. About 29% of adults under 30 consider open relationships to be morally acceptable, compared to only 6% of adults over 65. So a third of people say open relationships are okay. And a third of people say, hey, you know what, it's not normal to just be with one person. So again, with all these trends, these are more numbers that if you pile them up and stack them all together, you go, oh boy, if I want to have a very strong, lasting relationship with one person, doesn't look so good. Now, here's what's funny, and I found this a kind of an interesting statistic. As we know, in the media and on TV and in the movies and everything, there's an overrepresentation of the alphabet community. And when I say the alphabet, I mean LGBTQIAA plus parentheses, exponent, exclamation mark, asterisk community. And if you're a part of that community, no hate on you. But honestly, like, you've got enough letters on there. I mean, because if you keep adding them, you're going to basically, it'd be just shorter to say everybody but straight people. Just saying. Anyway, what I found interesting is there's an overrepresentation of that in the movies. And here's an interesting stat that they say here. Polyamory is still a smallish subculture, but it's already much more common than being gay or lesbian. Americans think that about 24% of people are gay or lesbian, but the true percentage is closer to 2%. So young people today think 25% are part of that community, where it's really only 2%. Yet we have a month dedicated, and we have flags flying for it, and companies will, for the month, change their logos over. And, you know, in almost every movie now, there's a representation of a couple that is part of that community. Again, so it's an overrepresentation, because if you were to say out of 100 actors on TV or 100 relationships on TV, if you're going to do an accurate percentage of it, it would be about 2%, or 2 out of 100 relationships would be this type of relationship. However, as we know in movies and in everything else, they're portraying it much higher than that. I mean, almost every TV show has a couple that is of that community. So, of course, young people think it's about 25%. So, but what they're saying basically is that they say thus among America's 83 million millennials, 24 million are sympathetic to poly ideals, 17 million have tried it, and 4 million are currently in a poly relationship, compared to 3 million who are part of the alphabet community. So if you so among the 83 million millennials, 24 are okay with it, 17 have tried it, and 4 million are in it. So that's 45 million of the 83 million are either in one, have tried one, or are sympathetic to it. Again, that doesn't bode well for long-term, like one-on-one relationships. They go on to talk about like why it's hard. Well, we know why it's hard. Because usually one person gets hurt, somebody falls in love with somebody else. There's jealousy. People leave each other for somebody else. There's no true pair bonding. And they even, let me actually read what they say, because so many times I'll say stuff and people disagree with me. They say, poly people have to learn to manage their sexual jealousy by minimizing it and or eroticizing it. Sexual jealousy has deep evolutionary roots with clear adaptive functions in increasing paternity certainty, protecting pair bonds, and reducing STI transmissions. Jealousy is instinctive and hard to manage, but lots of emotions that we learn to manage also have deep evolutionary roots. Kids learn to manage their anger, teens learn to manage their moodiness, and married people learn to manage their irritability. But many adults have never tried to manage their jealousy. I'm sorry, but I guess I'm just old Uncle Joker, because I just do not. I just don't see how this turns out to be a good thing. But they do say here that that monogamy, it increases paternity certainty. That's a big deal to us guys. Women always know it's theirs, but guys are getting fooled at higher rates that the kid's theirs and it's not. They say it's good at protecting pair bonds. We know women and men, but women have many partners, and it erodes their ability to pair bond. Men, and I did a video on this, I think last year or the year before, men can have many partners, but it does not erode their ability to pair bond. And you can go back and find that video. I don't have a link to it, but it's somewhere in my 500 videos. And reducing STI transmission. And as this is eroding, STI growth, STI growth, there is an explosion in the STI, or the transmitted disease community. Amongst doctors, they've talked about it, how amongst, not the community, but in the community of young people, there is an explosion of STI problems. Like I said, I'll leave this link down below. I think it's an interesting read. And I'd really suggest going through here, because it is a good read. Quillette, I don't always agree with everything that they've said, but they do have some good points. I do want to say here the benefits of monogamy, and this is kind of what we talk about here on this channel, is that this is why I think a lot of guys that say, hey, if I can't have monogamy, if I can't have a decent relationship, I'm going to tap out completely because I'm not okay with this other stuff. They say pair bonds go back millions of years in mammals and at least 2 million years in our lineage. However, cultural institutions of monogamy seem to have developed only since the rise of Holocene agriculture and urbanization in the last 10,000 years, and they became civilizationally central only in the last couple thousand years, as in ancient Greece and Rome. Monogamous societies flourished. That's no accident. They say, of course, married people often had affairs. Men visited spicy workers and bought a little something from the ladies of the night. And elites often acted polyamorous or polygynous in secret. And we kind of have some weird stuff going now with Hollywood and everything else. But they go through the benefits and the risks. And again, I'll leave this link down below. I think it's actually kind of a really good read. So, this is another case out there that if you guys are still kind of considering going out and finding that unique sunflower that is, not high body counts and is going to stick by your side for the rest of your life, it seems more and more it's just not likely to happen. And I think that's why a lot of guys are keeping things casual, because they don't want to get roped into something that's serious that they're going to get hurt with later in life.